It's lights out, everybody, and welcome back to the Low Downforce podcast, the For Friend Formula One podcast, and we are coming off the 2025 season finale, so you knew we all had to be here. J9, Matt, Josh, and myself, Ben, we are all here to recap the final race weekend, the championship deciding weekend of the season, as well as a quick look back on everything that was. I am sick under the weather. I am doing my best to pull through this, but I wasn't going to miss this because my boy Lando Norris is the 2025 Formula One world champion. He only needed P3. That's what he got. So if you go check the stats, if you go look at the driver standings, he winds up hanging on to the championship by only 2 points over Max Verstappen, 13 points ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri. What a season it was. We've talked about it before in length, but you don't get these seasons often. You don't get three-way winner takes all at the end of the year. Regardless of who you were cheering for, there were three really good drivers worth celebrating, and it's cool that we had that storyline going all the way to the end of the year because, spoiler alert, the race was not so great. But it's not just me to decide that. We always give our race rating right off the bat. J9, I'm jumping to you first. What did you think of Abu Dhabi? Was it championship good, race good? How do you feel?
No, from a race perspective, it wasn't that exciting. I think that this was one of the biggest ones for tire strategy because you had a lot of people like Hamilton, like Russell, like Leclerc, even Fernando Alonso, so many of those who are in that midfield who are trying to get really solid extra points. And it was either a one stop or a two stop. And that really made it really interesting. Some people followed others, like when Norris went out, Leclerc also went out because they had different strategies on how they were wanting to pass each other. And so that kind of kept me engaged the whole time. Was the race exciting? No, not much happened. But because of the tire strategy, because you were wondering, okay, Oscar passes Norris right at the beginning. Is he going to go and try to catch Verstappen? Is that possible? Was that on purpose? Was it not? It just kind of kept you guessing. So it wasn't that the race was exciting, but you were always guessing of like what's going to happen because that championship was still in limbo. So I think that's what made me continue to want to watch it and be engaged. So I would give it a solid 7 because it wasn't the worst race, but it wasn't the best. I enjoyed watching a couple of my favorite drivers just really drive well. And at the end, Verstappen won, and that was very impressive compared to the rest of the season. So
if there was not a championship on the line, I think this might have been the worst race of the season. There was just
I don't disagree, but there was a championship on the line.
No, I'm giving it like a 3.
So
like
it's a factor in it.
Not a whole lot happened during the race. I feel like it was kind of just a processional for most of the race. There were a few overtakes here and there. Lando's was controversial, maybe, on Yuki Tsunoda. We'll certainly get into that later. But it just wasn't that excited. And I was waiting for a safety car or something to make it interesting, and just nothing happened.
I was waiting for Yuki to just go and then like a big colossal crash.
We got the radio message where Yuki was like, "I know what to do."
I got it. I know what to do.
Didn't know what to do. I think it did. This weekend definitely proved. I think this comes up every year in F1 circles. Brazil should be the last race of the year. Like ending in the Americas, Brazil being such an incredible track, a lot of championships decided or influenced there. I was kind of in Josh's boat, kind of hovering 3 of 10, 4 of 10. I think I'm going to lock in a 4 of 10 because like I said, we've gotten lucky because of whether it's the two McLaren drivers, whether it was Max making a surge at the end. We really lucked out that there were a couple stinker races this year, but every time there was a bad race, it felt like there was a significant storyline to go with it, something worth watching. And yeah, it was a pretty pedestrian final race of the year, but all it took was one slight move, one slight mistake, and the championship completely changes. And so that at least grips you the whole way through. Matt, fellow McLaren fan, gotta be feeling pretty good, but the on-track racing, how'd you feel about it?
I gave the race a 6, to be honest. I thought it it lacked, I think, too much of the multi-car battles. There was some shuffling around in the midfield. I think the score I gave it is as high as it is because of the implications of it. But I think J9 hit the nail on the head for a lot of it. I mean, there was some tire strategy, some quality moves. I mean, I love the double passes, right? But at the end of the day, honestly, the front three were pretty locked in for most of the race. There wasn't a ton happening. And yeah, I don't know. I think that I can't go lower than that, though, just because a phenomenal end to the season for the team and for Lando.
Definitely. I think also to a degree, like nobody did insanely well, but I feel like all three kind of summed up their seasons in this race. Max, great qualifying, great race, finished as hot as he's been for the last third quarter of the season, winning. Oscar Piastri has the nice overtake on Lando on lap 1. I think a little bit of that was McLaren's strategy. I think having Oscar as the front man limited what Max could do to try and cause chaos. And as you mentioned, Lando, after first pit, came out in traffic, made a couple, I would argue, decently nice overtakes. Nothing crazy special, but all three of them, I think, didn't put a foot wrong the weekend. Of course, only one could be champion. Of course, that was Lando Norris. Josh, you've got the full breakdown, the full classification. It's weird. There's a lot of penalties. There's a lot I feel like we could talk about, but still not the greatest race.
Yeah, I feel like most of the penalties were kind of irrelevant. Somehow we had all 20 drivers finish. So J9, your hot take of like 3 DNFs plus Lando DNFing, very far from off. But
you had to give me some credit for like the worst that could have happened in the race. That's what I was trying to gain.
You want to know a fun fact about that?
Yeah,
that is the first time ever in Formula One history that the season finale has had no DNFs.
Wow. Fun fact. Well,
crazy.
Anyways, during the race, the final
fun
classification.
Fact, Ben. Nice one.
Like we said, Verstappen won, Piastri finished second, Norris third to clinch the world championship. Leclerc fourth, almost caught him, but not really. Russell fifth, Alonso sixth, Ocon seventh, Hamilton eighth, Hülkenberg ninth, and Lance Stroll 10th place, which cemented Aston Martin at sixth in the constructors. Is that right?
They certainly were.
Breaking a tiebreaker, getting that last point. Penalty-wise, Liam Lawson had a penalty for erratic driving.
No, excuse me. Just to be clear, Aston Martin P7, Racing Bulls V-Carb P6 behind Williams.
Liam Lawson had a 5-second penalty for erratic driving. Yuki Tsunoda had a 5-second penalty for erratic driving, which also was with Lando, where it was reviewed whether or not he went off the track to gain an advantage, which he did. His whole car was off, but they were arguing that Yuki kind of forced him off, and so that was the penalty there. Alex Albon got a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Oliver Behrman got a penalty for changing direction multiple times under braking. Pierre Gasly got a penalty for leaving the track without a justifiable reason multiple times. Lance Stroll got a penalty for making more than one change of direction. And that was all the penalties. But yeah, there was a long list of penalties.
I think you notice a lot of those are erratic driving penalties or like weaving kind of things.
Yeah.
I think once the Lando Tsunoda incident happened, that they kind of had to show some consistency. Although Liam Lawson did get his penalty for erratic driving before the Lando Tsunoda incident. But another fun fact for you, hopefully there's a better response to this one, is Lance Stroll is the final overtake using DRS. Kimi Antonelli is the final driver in Formula One history, for now at least, to use DRS.
Until they add it back in the next regs, depending on how big of a flop the upcoming regs may or may not be. I hope they're a lot better, though, because this year's regs kind of suck.
These are some unique, fun facts, Ben.
Thank you. I think DRS is actually, depending on how next year goes, I think DRS is going to be missed more than people think. Only time will tell. But Go for it.
It's just the cars are just going to drive so different. I don't know how much a traditional DRS as we have it now would actually change the new cars, right? So
Somebody explained it really well. So first off, I don't know visually what the new speed boost is going to be because it's more
speed boost.
It is more like battery allocation. I don't know if we're going to see a flap open, but I saw somebody comment on the internet today that I thought was a really great way to point it out is DRS changed the way we watched racing from the standpoint of it was no longer about, oh, did my driver get passed? You were watching the timing intervals. As soon as they got within a second, you felt like something could happen. And it didn't always, but all of a sudden, it wasn't like, oh, all of a sudden the move either happens or it doesn't. DRS had you cheering for closing gaps. And as soon as it wasn't about, oh, you have to fully catch and pass this driver. You just got to get within 1 second, and then all of a sudden you have a chance to make something happen. Some purists will argue that maybe that's not how racing should be, that you shouldn't have a boost right behind.
DRS train.
As a viewer, though, seeing that DRS flap open in the back, knowing they were getting more speed, knowing they were closing in on the driver in front of it and now had an advantage, it was a good visual to kind of to feel in it, to feel like the race was always closer than it was. But Josh, you've hit it 3 or 4 times already this episode. It is worth talking. Yuki Tsunoda and Lando Norris, one of, if not the only really pivotal moment in the race. Lando making his way back through the pack after pitting for the first time, comes up to Yuki Tsunoda, who all of the world knows is solely on the track at this point to try and help Max win the championship by holding Lando up. First chance Lando gets by, but does go off track. Steward's review, and like you said, Josh, Yuki Tsunoda winds up being the one with the penalty. He commits to a direction, Lando commits to his move. Yuki moves a second time, forcing Lando off the track, and they deem that that is Yuki's fault, not Lando's fault. But it's certainly worth a discussion. I'm kind of in the boat, and maybe I'm biased. I'm a Lando fan, obviously. But I don't think Lando deserved the penalty. I think he was forced off the track, but I also think it was marginal. Not that it really made a difference. I don't think Yuki necessarily deserved the penalty either. I feel like it was kind of thing where they both could have done a little bit better. They both kind of impeded each other or affected each other in a way. But I think effectively it was so marginal. But I guess if you had to pick one, that Lando's other option is crashing into Yuki, which obviously would have been.
He would not have crashed either way. But I just wanted to see the penalty on Lando so that he would drop a position and then have to fight his way into winning the championship rather than just maintaining his position.
I'd argue, not to steal the mic, I'd argue it'd be even worse, because then what you'd wind up with probably is Oscar being given team orders if needed.
That's exactly what I wanted as a non-McLaren fan. I wanted to see all of the chaos.
I don't know. I think in the moment, though, that chaos is going to be like, oh my God, is Oscar going to do it? Is he not? What does this drama create? And then after it, you're kind of left with this feeling of, well, Oscar probably would have ultimately gotten over. Lando would have still won the championship that way, but then you got this like weird taste in your mouth of, in the final race, in the final moment, even though it's a team sport, you needed assistance from one of your championship.
That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where, obviously, if Yuki wanted to avoid a penalty, he would have just defended properly. But if he had defended properly, would Lando have been able to take that position? That's where I was like, could we just call it level?
Yeah.
Give him both a penalty or give him neither a penalty, right?
Again, just like he had nothing to lose. I'm just kidding. I don't.
I mean, he radioed it. He's like, I know what to do. And I thought that was going to be like hard right turn straight into Lando.
He's like banned from F1 forever, which would have been very intriguing. He had literally nothing to lose. It's not like he would have in 2026 had an issue because he doesn't have a seat.
He could find his way back onto the grid, I think.
Exactly.
In the future.
All was positive but I don't condone violence, so
it does.
It's okay.
It does in that sense, though. It does suck for Yuki a little bit that his potentially last ever Formula One weekend where he's a driver
failed.
Well, it's not even the failed. We can get into that in a little bit. But he wasn't even allowed to really compete. It was just I'm not saying that he's been impressive this season. He's not done great with the Red Bull opportunity, at least in
He
the
got
main
a total
team.
of 33 points. Like, Max's back fucking hurts.
No, it's 100% true. But
Yuki would have had more points, I think, if he was in the V carb the entire season.
I think that's true. I think
the second Red Bull car is worse than the sister team.
But the truth of the matter is,
but he could have done better.
Oh, 100%. But the way that this season panned out, the way that Yuki's F1 career is potentially ending as a starting driver, and he doesn't really get to have any kind of real race strategy. He doesn't even, I mean, for all the criticizing we do, he did one of the most important things. He didn't use it to great effect, but Red Bull was really hoping he would make it into Q3 this weekend to help Max potentially get a tow for pole position, stuff like that. And he did that. For better or worse, he winds up not setting a time in Q3, starting in 10th. But as somebody like Yuki, you want to help the team. You want to do what they're asking of you. But you'd also like to have a good final performance potentially for your career in Formula One. And I feel like because he had to exclusively play the team game, he was a little bit stripped of that. But we're going to move. Normally we go into track takes here, but we're saving that for a little bit of a season review coming up. So we're going to jump right ahead into our top and flop. And I'm going to keep it right here because it fits. We're actually going to go flops first this time. We're going to start low, go high. I'm flopping Yuki Tsunoda. I feel bad. It's a tough way to end your Formula One career, or potentially end your Formula One career. He's Red Bull's reserve driver next year, so we'll still see him. He might be relegated to girlfriend cam a little bit with when he shows up during the broadcasts, but he's asked to play the team game. He does make it into Q3, but they ask him to tow Max, and he doesn't really do a good job with that. Barely gains Max any time, and Max winds up going even faster without a tow on his next lap. And then in the race, you ask him to defend Lando. Not only does he not even successfully do it for a single straight, but he winds up picking up a penalty for erratic driving. And I look back very quickly to 2021, where Max, albeit some controversy, wins the race in Abu Dhabi and therefore wins the championship, his first in 2021. And Checo Perez played a very, very crucial role in defending Lewis Hamilton, slowed Lewis Hamilton up about 8 seconds in 2 laps, very much played a key role in winning that race for Max. And even over future years, we saw Sergio Perez playing the team game very effectively. Yuki couldn't offer anything whatsoever. And it only makes it funnier. We've made the joke already, but the whole "I know what to do" radio and then immediately not doing anything useful kind of feels like a really unfortunate sour stamp. He can't help the team out to win the championship in his last race. He gets no credit for his last race. He winds up finishing like P14 or something. And instead of riding off into the sunset or kind of getting a hero's goodbye, it's more of just a fizzle out into the background at Red Bull.
My flop is Zach Brown because he is the biggest cornball in the world. So when Max won his first title, it was in Abu Dhabi 2021, the famous race, battle against Lewis. And Christian Horner came on the radio after the race and has like an iconic call where he's like, "Max Verstappen, you are world champion." And Zach Brown, to Lando Norris's radio after crossing the finish line, he says, "Hello, is this the world champion hotline?" And I think that's just the lamest thing ever. What a corny guy.
It's so funny. I get
corny guy.
It's a little bit true to character, at least. Like,
Yeah.
at least he's kind of a doofus all the time.
That is absolutely my flop, though. He had the chance because that's going to get replayed so many times of just like Lando Norris becoming world champion. It's just like, "Hello, hotline."
Well, I'm gonna flop the McLaren haters, so just right back in your face, Josh.
That's me.
Yeah,
that
fuck
is me.
them, baby.
No, it was hard to pick a true flop, and I know Jen, you're about to pop in, but really, that's one that I kind of stand by. I mean, I just think that everyone really wanted to see this slip through the fingers of the McLaren drivers, right? And McLaren had 2 different chances to win. Obviously, made one of them happen, but yeah, Right back at you, Josh.
Fair. J9?
I just have so many things to come back at you with, but I'm actually going to take the Max Verstappen route of just it happened. I'm honestly going to flop. I think at the beginning of each season, and it's maybe because I think their livery is really cool. I think that it's a cool car company. Aston Martin to me is just such a flop. I think that we could hate all day long on Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso. You could say that he's getting older and maybe he shouldn't be driving. But I think that when you look at the team, they tried so hard to be good, and they have so much faith in Fernando Alonso, and I don't think he's the guy anymore. I have all the respect in the world for him, for how well he's done in this sport. But I think it's come to a time when he's not the productive veteran who's really pushing the mark and driving strong. He's just kind of coasting. I wouldn't even say in the midfield. Like he typically is in the midfield. He did fairly well this race, but this was kind of an anomaly. So I do have to tip my hat to him on this last race for getting sixth or seventh.
Sixth.
But with 89 points in total, seventh overall in the Constructor Championship, I look at the type of money that they have and the type of investment that they're making, and I'm not really seeing the return on Lance Stroll at all. I know why he's in the seat, but they've got to at some point look at business versus family and what's going to be the best for the team. And if they decide that is family, all power to them. Put someone else in Fernando Alonso's seat who's going to gain you points and give them a better car than you currently have. So I'm excited for 26 to see if that new car design is going to help them at all. But I'm like sorely disappointed. They used to be a much better car and better team. And now looking them on track, I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest disappointment of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Alpine is in a similar boat to some extent, right? I mean, they
Absolutely.
scored less points in the whole season than Max did in this race.
But they scored more points than any other last place team ever.
Yeah, I mean, still
not a great look.
Again, with the fun facts.
I'm surprised though. Like, I 100% agree. Aston Martin definitely too big a name to be this disappointing over the course of the season, but I feel like that does miss the mark, at least from the Fernando Alonso side, for just this race. So Fernando Alonso, like we mentioned, finishes P6, and that actually moves him up to 10th in the driver's standings. So talk about broken backs out here, Max Verstappen, throw Fernando Alonso in there as well.
No.
But I think realistically, right, I would argue
is back-breaking work.
He's carrying his team.
Congratulations, you're average.
7th.
I mean,
congratulations.
And next year they have Adrian Newey designing the car and being team principal.
Well, that's the thing, right?
I feel like a lot of their investment is looking towards next year.
You've got the greatest Formula One car designer in history heading up your team this year, and I think they're always going to be held back by that family versus winning kind of argument that you made, J9. But I do think that Fernando Alonso in many ways is in it for next year with Adrian Newey. I think if the experiment doesn't work, I think he's probably going to retire. I imagine that nobody's going to buy into the Aston Martin program in the same way if Adrian Newey can only do so much with Lance Stroll in the car, that kind of thing. But I actually thought Fernando Alonso, at least on this season, went out on a high, even if it wasn't a great season, to your point.
I did give him that.
But you're certainly right. There's certainly other people worth shouting out even more, which brings us to our tops. So we got to go out with a bang, of course, before we go into our season review. But Josh, who did you top this week?
I'm going my guy, Charles Leclerc.
Sorry.
I got to go Charles Leclerc. He kind of had speed out of nowhere this weekend. The Ferrari car has been terrible, and he wasn't quite to the point of pushing Lando Norris to fight for third, but he had almost gotten within range of getting within range. of Lando Norris this race. And with how bad the Ferrari car has been all season, I'm going to take that as a win. I voted him for driver of the day, even though he did not win because Max Verstappen won, because he always wins. And he won the race, obviously. But yeah, I'm going Charles as my top. Ferrari, he'll end on a high note. Not so much for Lewis, but that's a whole different thing.
Depressing. I think I definitely agree with you. I think Ferrari, as much as we shit on them throughout the whole season, they still ended in fourth. They were still fairly okay. They just weren't at the top, and that's okay. But they did not take my top. My top was definitely Verstappen. I think that it is very clear that he is the strongest driver on the grid. And you saw the difference between strong driving and strong car. And I think that McLaren no doubt had the fastest car, but we can all agree Verstappen is the best driver.
Yep.
For what he was given, he made the absolute most of it. And he will say, in all the interviews, there were so many things that, put them in the position to fight in this last race, that were just plain luck. And he's not wrong. Like, just random things happened to McLaren that made it so. But I mean, we consistently saw Max show up. We consistently saw him getting on podium, driving incredibly strong, given the car that he had. And you see that in his tactics. You see that in the way that his radio interacts with him. They just say, do your thing. And then he gets first. It's just, watching him drive is like a pleasure. And interesting that you can hear back to our last season and hear me shitting on him. I've really learned to respect him a lot. So I think he's my overall top for sure. But I do give a lot of respect to McLaren. They have a fast car. They have very good drivers. Not a big fan of Lando, but I'm a big fan of Piastri. So I got to give it to him. Absolutely.
I think a lot of the things you say is 100% correct. Coming from a huge Lando fan, I think in some ways this could be Max's best season in Formula One. He certainly showed fight that nobody else would have been able to manage with the car that he had partway through the season. But I think that's probably at the same time the reason that I don't understand the Lando hate as much, because as a Lando fan, I don't know anybody who would argue that the best driver on the grid is Max. And it's not even that close. He's so dominant. He's so talented. As Lando said after the race, he is a machine. Like, he's a different level. And I think that's part of the reason that I think McLaren as a whole got a lot of shit for this championship. The reason that, Max included, you talk about Barcelona when he intentionally drives into George Russell at the end of the race. All three of the championship contenders had really high highs this season and some really low lows. And I'm sure there's some recency bias here, but even before I started watching Formula One, when I first started paying attention to Formula One, beginning of college, so 2016, 2017, in the middle of Mercedes dominance, at that point, other than that Nico Rosberg championship, up until this year, we have seen Lewis Hamilton win and we have seen Max win. And they both can show a level of dominance that very few are capable of. And so even 2021, which goes down to the wire between the two of them, we're talking about it going down to the wire between arguably two of the top three, if not top two greatest Formula One drivers ever. I mean, this is the definition of battle of the Titans. And so we get a year where, and you look much further back in Formula One, if you look at these multi-driver fights, where you have guys who have really hot starts like Oscar, you have guys who are really hot finishers like Max, and then you've got guys who just hang around and are consistent long enough through the whole season like Lando that it winds up being enough. And I think in the face of the absolute dominance we've seen, I mean, it's only 2 years ago that Red Bull puts together the most dominant season in Formula One history, where we got accustomed to, the champion winner, the eventual winner just winds up slapping everybody the whole season just about. And in my experience, for really being a huge Formula One fan only recently, this is the first taste of a championship where the pressure of multiple people being in it and being near the same level means that mistakes happen. Different drivers have different great weekends. And speaking of different people having different great weekends, my top is everybody but Alpine. And it's a little bit more of a season review, but Alpine sucked, dude. And I know I'm not focusing on the flop, so I just want to get that out of the way. But P9 this weekend was Nico Hulkenberg, which gets Kick Sauber up to 70 points. They finished P9 in the constructors with 70 points, which, by the way, thank you and goodbye to Sauber, whether it's Kick Sauber, whether it's Alfa Romeo. They've been on the grid for 30 years. They're fully turning over to Audi next year, so they will be missed. The original founder, Peter Sauber, was in attendance at the race. I feel like he should have gotten a little more attention than he did with all of obviously the championship headlines going around him. But P9 70 points, that would have been good enough for P6 in the constructors last year. Last year, P6 was 65 points. So the fact that all but one team on the grid did better than that is so impressive. It's so fun to watch, and I'm worried that some people are going to take it for granted how impressive we get Isaac Hadjar in a V-carb with a rookie podium, how we get Ollie Behrman tied best ever finish in a race. Again, pretty much, Nico Hulkenberg podium, longest
Huge.
career without a podium up until that point. And we're talking about the 9th place team is pulling out a podium. And maybe we didn't get all of the wins that we did last year, but what a year.
This doesn't change that fact, but in past years, there have been roughly 24 more points up for grabs because you have a fastest lap available. So I guess that's even worse for Alpine.
I would argue that that's even more impressive that everybody got there.
That everybody else got there. Lap. Yes. Okay, ignore that. Never mind.
It was almost a good fun fact, though.
Yeah, that would have been cool to go out with.
Yeah, I mean, it was... I have to agree with you, Ben, too. And I do have my own top. But it's incredible to me how we're seeing the diversification in success this year. It just looks different, right? The number of winners versus the number of teams scoring points. It makes it feel like it actually could be anyone's race potentially. And it could be, a number of team seasons next year. I'm going to go with quite an easy top, which is just to really lock in. Lando, he has this reputation for bottling. I mean, trust me, if this is 2023 especially, and maybe you could make an argument in 24 just as much, but he always used to bottle pole. It didn't matter what Saturday looked like. He could not convert Sunday. And not only did he convert on Sundays this year, he took the lead from Oscar and actually held on to it. I mean, the number of times that people have expected him to crumble under pressure over the past few years is just, it's crazy how he has this bias among the F1 community compared to so many of the other drivers who just don't perform. Like they think he's not going to perform regardless of Saturday. Okay, yeah. But I have to give my hats off to him. I mean, he showed maturity, I think, more this year than any year before. Good pace management, tire management, and he made it. He stuck it out. It could have been one penalty or one bad move away from losing that championship.
I think Lando had that reputation because in the past he was a bottler. He did have those issues.
Yeah.
But I think last year, especially getting into some fights with Max Verstappen, where
Max kind of immensely.
Max kind of slapped him around. Matt, you hit that nail on the head where you said he's matured a lot. I think that prepared Lando mentally a lot for this season to be able to be in it for the long haul over the course of the entire season. Even when he was getting smacked around by Piastri at the beginning of this season, he was still finishing in second and third. Like, he was getting podiums, and those were disappointments for him.
In that same vein, I would expect Oscar Piastri, now having gone through a championship fight,
I would agree,
to come out a lot stronger as well. But Matt, I'm going to agree with you there in that maybe my favorite stat from Lando that I think really gets swept under the rug over the season. The way that people criticize him, especially earlier in the year, is by qualifying P2 on the front row behind Max. He winds up not just tying, but beating Oscar this year, 13-11 in Grand Prix qualifying, which I think if you quickly think back to the season, how the storylines ebbed and flowed, you would have guessed that Oscar dominated qualifying, or certainly won qualifying this year, which Lando actually, with that stat, keeps his streak alive of he has beaten every single one of his teammates every single year in Formula One in qualifying, including his rookie year. And it's no slouch because every single one of his teammates thus far is a multi-time Grand Prix winner. We're talking Carlos Sainz, we're talking Daniel Ricciardo, we're talking Oscar Piastri. It's not just Fernando Alonso against Lance Stroll, where Lance Stroll has lost 36 straight qualifying sessions to his teammate kind of thing. These are decent competitors, and I think that Lando definitely had his ups and downs this year, but I think the downs made it really feel like, oh, Oscar's dominating here. And even Lando at the end of the year was able to squeak out one of his weaknesses at the beginning of the season into a strength. But we've been talking about the season a lot. Normally we do a track takeaway, what this weekend meant to us, what we learned from it, but we're going a little bit broader, whether it is looking ahead to 2026, whether it's looking back on the 2025 season that was. J9, I'm going to jump to you first. What is your highlight, your season takeaway, your key observation as we wind down the podcast season, if you will?
I think one of the biggest highlights, and I was just thinking about it, I said my biggest top was Verstappen, and I think that one of the biggest highlights, and something that I thought was really a change in the season, was when Christian Horner was fired. And I think that made like a really big impact, not just at Red Bull, but I think F1 overall. I think that he had brought so much like negative news and spotlight to the sport that shouldn't have been there, with the whole scandal and everything. And it just, I think it left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, who didn't really know F1 for the sport. And then for the people who did know F1, bad taste in their mouth for Red Bull. It kind of sounds like I'm very Red Bull centric this episode, but I think that made a really big impact. And I don't think without that we would have had the championship come all the way down to the last race. I don't think that Max would have been there, and fully up at the top. But I think that the highlight for me was that, but overall with all of the teams, and you kind of hinted at it earlier, Ben, last year, it felt, obviously it was so dominated by Max, and McLaren was really coming up into power. Mercedes was still dominant. Ferrari. Then it just kind of dropped off into fucking nothing after that. And it wasn't really worth the time of thinking about the other teams because it wasn't going to happen. But I think that this year there were so many times where we had these random wins and random highlights and positives that I think that the highlight for me this season was looking at the diversity of people who won and the diversity in the mix of points all across the board, for all the teams minus Alpine. I'll give it to Gasly, though. He did get some points. But I think that was like really good to see. There wasn't like, you could obviously see McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes were still pretty dominant, but even Ferrari at times, I mean, we talk about it all the time. Ferrari wasn't as good as they have been. Williams came up. You had Aston Martin kind of in the midfield and like irrelevant, but then you had like Kick Sauber, like Hulkenberg winning, getting on podium. To me, that was a win, basically for him. Racing Bull is doing so well. Haas even doing so well. So like at times I was just rooting for many more teams than I have in the past. And I think that was really cool going into 2026, that you saw more and more teams being very competitive. And you see that in the race results, and you see that in in the points, both drivers and constructors. So I think that was my highlight, just getting more people in the mix. I talk so much about Red Bull, and I enjoy watching Max. But you hate to see it year after year. It's the same. In any sport, it's like, okay, we got to get some new people making competitive, and I think this year we got that.
I mean, to your point, whether you want to call it Franco Colapinto or you just want to call it the second Alpine seat, if you include the first 6 races with Jack Doohan, I mean, that seat, that second Alpine seat, is the only driver that didn't score points this year. Everybody else managed points, which is seriously impressive. I want to jump in just because it kind of goes to my season takeaway as well. And it's that we are lucky. The present of F1 and the future of F1 are in good hands because we currently have 2 of the greatest Formula One rookie classes on the grid at the same time. First is going to be 2019, which is Lando Norris, your now current Formula One champion. George Russell finished P4 in the standings, actually had the most but point scores of anybody this year, scoring in 23 out of 24 races this year.
He was also 2 laps away from completing every single lap this season.
Very impressive. And obviously, the only time he doesn't score, he also misses out on one Q3, and that's, of course, when his car just dies in Monaco. So he doesn't have the car to compete for a championship, but he certainly is one of the most consistent drivers of the year. Expect him, if Mercedes engine is all that people talk about, to be maybe not necessarily the favorite, but very much in the title contention next year. And then the third member of the 2019 class is Alex Albon, who finishes P8 in the driver's standings, of course, best of the rest because we don't have anybody really contributing in the second Red Bull seat. But P8, he winds up with Williams' highest point total in a season by a single driver since 2016, almost 10 years. And so he has a great year. He was bagging multiple P5s at the beginning of the season. Those 3 all standing out. And a huge tip of the cap needs to go to, maybe not all, but very much most and very much the collective, this current rookie season. I think we are going to see, I don't know if it's multiple world champions. I don't know if it's multiple race winners. I don't exactly know how high the ceiling is, but I mentioned a couple of them earlier. Ollie Behrman, P4 in Mexico, tied for Haas's ever best result. That's basically a podium. You've got Isaac Hadjar in a V-carb getting a podium in Zandvoort. Kimi Antonelli, 3 podiums this year. He had some ups and downs as well, but Josh and I got to see his first F1 podium in Montreal. And then not just a podium, but he bags P2, both in the sprint, both qualifyings, and the Grand Prix in Brazil, and then picks up a podium as well in Las Vegas. Gabriel Bortoleto pulled a P6 in Hungary. If we're counting Liam Lawson, I think he had a P5 in Austria maybe as well. Some seriously impressive performances. Definitely multiple rookies. Not all in great cars, proving that they are already on the verge or already in podium contention, which is cool. And then I got to give a little completely separate other shout-out season takeaway. I'm biased. Obviously, we know I'm a huge Lando Norris fan. As somebody who's grown up in Atlanta, not a lot of championships won around here. I do find it pretty cool that my first F1 race this year means I got to see my favorite driver. Even though he had a terrible race in Montreal, I got to see my favorite driver during the year that he won his first championship, which is certainly a cool experience. I definitely am going to cherish that, the whole experience for a while. So, yeah, hats off 2025. Pretty awesome.
I'm honestly a little bit disappointed by the year because I feel like, well, one, Ferrari did not live up to expectations. But number 2, I feel like coming into the year with how competitive last year was between all the different teams, we had 7 race winners. And coming into last year, the regulations, I thought all of the top teams were going to be insanely close to each other. I thought we were going to have
you're just blaming Ferrari.
Competitive races through the entire season of like where any driver in the top 4, maybe even 5 teams has a chance to fight for a podium, fight for a win, just depending on the race. And that absolutely did not happen. I feel like McLaren was as dominant as they could be. Max Verstappen in the second half of the year was as dominant as they could be. Mercedes was good here and there, but they were consistent, but they weren't great. And then Ferrari was consistent, but consistently disappointing throughout the entire year. And then some of the midfield teams are fun. Like the midfield battle was exciting, but I expected that excitement in the top half of the teams, and that just was not the case this year.
Dang. And I wonder, like I'm getting a buzz in the back of my microphone, but hey, everyone has had awesome takeaways for the season, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of really cool spots in this season, just the performance all around. And honestly, I think, the rookies was big for me too, but just to add on something else, and I know that, Ben, you already talked about McLaren a bit with getting to see Lando, but I just feel like, I mean, even with Lando having won the championship, I feel like McLaren has two number one drivers. And people always say you can't do that, right? You can't do that. There's got to be team orders. There's got to be some kind of pecking order. But I really think that it doesn't matter that Norris wins the crown at the end of the season. Like, this is a just bang up, phenomenal team. And it's not just the car. They've got two fantastic drivers, and I can't tell you that they'd win in every single car that you could possibly put them in. Put them both in an Alpine. Would they have any shot at the title? I don't think so.
P20 every race.
Yeah, I think they would do a bit better than that. But either way, I mean, I just think that's, just that dual threat. It's going to be a big story going into next year, especially with the new cars. Who's going to handle it well? Will there be a number one driver? Possibly, but I just don't think you can justify that there is one right now. And getting to see the team that, I hadn't even seen a single race of F1 until 2023. And so call me a new fan if you want to, but it's just phenomenal to see this turnaround where I got on right on the right time, or right at the right time, right? If I had started rooting for McLaren this year, you could call me a bandwagon. But no, I'm really happy with the season. And I just think it's been a good one.
It's interesting. We talk about dominance in the sport, and at least two number ones, we'll see how that moves back and forth as we go forward. But from a constructor's perspective, in some ways, I think we're also lucky that this is the end of a regulation, because we get a lot of teams maximizing their car at the very end. We see a lot of competitiveness, but we also potentially avoid, and I'm saying this as a McLaren fan, we avoid a potential, dominance, at least in the constructors, where you say, Matt, two number one drivers, two championship contenders, one eventual championship winner. You very easily, under this regulations, could have McLaren taking titles for the next couple of years, which, don't get me wrong, I'd love to see, but the whole pot gets stirred again completely next year. We have no clue who's going to stand out. Expect more DNFs and mechanical retirements, and expect more random shock winners at the end, and chaos as qualifying doesn't match the race, and different drivers in different spots, as everybody has to figure out next year. And I want to get to next year, just a quick little send you off into the sunset for the end. Josh, I know you have our predictors championship results, which also came down to the finale.
Yeah, well, I had mostly all but wrapped it up going into the final race, but that final podium position between you and J9 was contentious. And yes, I did end up winning the championship with 57 points. I got my entire podium right this race. So I got 3 points. Matt, you finished second with 47 points, 10 behind me. You needed a perfect predictions week, and I couldn't have gotten any, and some of our predictions overlapped. So that kind of sealed the championship for me when we made the predictions. But you had 1 point predicting the Verstappen win, which we all got. So you bumped up to 47. And the final place, it was separated by 1 point. J9 was in third. Ben was in fourth. And after this race, J9 got 2 points to finish with 38 points. And Ben, you only got 1 point. So you will finish in last. You can take your Lando victory, but you are last out of the four of us.
You know what? If I have to sacrifice the third place predictors championship for my favorite driver winning it all, I will take it. Everybody talks about the
Yeah,
worst to first
that's fair.
story. I have pulled off the first to worst after winning last year. So congrats, Josh. You kind of dominated.
I now
It
have the
got
crown.
close.
I was good. Yeah.
It got
Oh
close
man,
at the
I
end,
was so
Matt.
close.
Matt, you were the Max Verstappen of our predictors championship, coming
That's
from
right.
behind
Yeah.
at the end. But Josh, I mean, I don't know if it was truly you led every week this year, but it was damn near close if it wasn't. So hats
After week one,
off to you.
after Australia, I was in second place, and after the second race in China, I had taken the lead, and I don't think I gave it up the rest of
Wow.
the season.
Wow. That's the dominance that'll bore people, everybody.
Well,
Yeah, there we
But
go.
exactly.
I hope everybody
It's opposite
tuned in
because
all
Ferrari
year.
stunk this year, and I did well.
It's
I
true.
stunk
McLaren was
last
How it
good,
year.
and
They
you
goes.
did
got
bad.
fourth. You talk like Ferrari's Alpine, okay?
They basically are.
Oh,
Well, what a
We'll see next year.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Swap
Next
hopefully
cars.
year
the
is our year.
dominance didn't bore people too much that they listened along all year. We obviously get I would argue, much earned break. We've more or less been recording almost every single week since February. We are now in December, but that means February is once again right around the corner. And because we are heading into a new regulation, this is the perfect time to get into Formula One. There are so many storylines, as we've talked about. We've just crowned a new champion. We have no clue if that means anything whatsoever for next year with everything being shaken up. But
Except the number that Lando Norris will be wearing on
that
his
is
car.
true. Confirmed today that Lando Norris, Mr. LN4, will be LN1. You can only get the number one or wear the number one in Formula One if you are the current champion. So it is earned, not given. Shout out to
And Max
him.
will have to pick a new number.
He's talked about 69. Will he do that? Will he go back
He might
to
be
33?
3. He might be 33.
We will see, but you won't have to wait too long to find out, because with the new regulation change, that means we get, instead of the normal 3 days of preseason testing, we get 6 days of preseason testing, and we are already just about 2 months out from it happening all over again. February 11th in Bahrain is the first of 2 3-day public testing periods where we get the idea of who's going to be good, who's not going to be good. Just before then as well, we will see the new cars, we will see the new liveries of all the teams and what their challengers are going to look like heading into 2026, heading into the new regulations. We hope you join us for all of it, because Formula One keeps getting better and better. It keeps coming up with storylines. It keeps coming up with surprises. We hyped up this year's rookie class. Who knows what's in store for the couple rookies joining next year? But you will just have to stick along for the long haul to find out. Stay on the ride with us. We are going nowhere, baby. Until then, everybody, though, stay speedy. Goodbye.